Jenny Holmes, and I am 48 years old, and I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I do a lot of things. I'm a teacher, but also a triathlete, also a traveler. Well, Brian, my husband, couldn't do any of the things that I do without him. And then my parents, I have both my parents still in my life, and my sister and her family, and then our 2 newly adopted dogs. We have no idea what they are, but we think there's some pug in there, maybe some type of Jack Russell Terrier in there, maybe. I think it's pretty exciting to be a part of this and to stop and actually think about what I've accomplished so far in my life. I would not have thought to do anything like this until I heard about the 40 over 40 campaign, and I was like, that's kind of a neat idea, because once you get to this age, normally you're just like, okay, well, I'm halfway through life, I'm going to plan the next half. You don't stop and think about what you've already accomplished, so I think it's a pretty neat idea. So I was able to qualify for the 70.3 World Championships for 2021, and the experience was absolutely amazing, being part of such an elite group of athletes in 2021, and I really enjoyed it. And so my coach said, well, have you ever thought about trying to qualify for Team USA? And I said, it's crossed my mind, but I'm not fast enough to ever qualify for Team USA. And she's like, well, we can work on that. The start line, because you all chit chat before you get ready, and she's like, yeah, I did a race here once, and I remember my legs were just trash afterwards, and I got done, I'm like, well, I can see why. My legs are trash too. I like it. You're like, no! I got the letter, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. So we planned a trip to Hamburg, Germany, and trained all year for the competition, the sprint distance competition in Hamburg. And it was probably one of my favorite races I've ever done. It was the camaraderie with Team USA is just something I've never experienced before. You're walking down the street and you see somebody else in a Team USA uniform and you're like, we're best friends, even though you have no idea who this person is. It's pretty impressive. Like, I had such an amazing experience running through the streets of Hamburg and being part of that team and grabbing the flag as you cross the finish line, representing the United States. It was something that I'll never forget. That was a challenge. I have never missed that much work in my life, especially in a row. And so I had to pre-plan all of my lessons. I made a video for every day I was absent for the sub to show and share with my students, because my students only saw me one day and then I was gone for 2 weeks. The reason I became a history teacher is because I had an amazing 5th grade teacher who really made history, get us to relate to history. And so I was like, I love history. And it turned out, beyond that, I really did like history. It didn't matter who the teacher was. I really just loved the story of history. I like learning about it. I like the type of history that isn't in your face, big world events. I like the common everyday, how did you survive living on the Great Plains? What did it take for you to be able to make it through an entire year? That, to me, I think is the most interesting. I would like my students to remember that I taught them how to think. That's what I would really, it doesn't have to be from me, just that they know how to think. So when we were living in Wisconsin, I spent a year as a librarian in an elementary school, and I really liked it. And I was able to attend a librarian conference, and it kind of opened my eyes to oh, library is more than just reading books to kids once a week. There's a lot more to this, and I loved the research aspect of it and the technology aspect of it. And so I decided that I would go and get my master's in school library. We do try and do some type of fun activity when we have to travel for a race. We don't just do the race, we always try and do something else with it, just because Otherwise, that'd be boring for Brian. He is my number one support. He is there every single night, every single morning, I should say. He's like, what is your workout for tonight? When do you think you're gonna be done? I'll have dinner ready for you. And it's always a good, nutritious dinner, so I don't have to worry about, is this going to be something that's not going to help me recover quickly, because it always does. And he's always supportive. He's never like, oh, do you have to train again tonight? That never happens. Like, he's always my number one advocate for, maybe you should try for this tougher race or this longer race, or maybe you should, try for Team USA again. So he is definitely the number one reason that I am able to do this racing. And the celiac disease was a bit of a surprise. I did not see that one coming. And what ended up happening is I started having these really odd symptoms, and I didn't know what they were attributed to. But it all kind of culminated actually on Christmas, about 10, 12 years ago, and just about passed out. And my mom thankfully noticed and was able to help me get into bed so that I didn't hurt myself. And so I'm like, what in the world is causing this? And so I started Googling some of the symptoms, and the first thing that popped up was celiac disease. So I met with my doctor. We went through a lot of testing. Everything came back negative. And unfortunately, that's a very common story from what I've read. And he's like, we're gonna do genetic testing. So the genetic testing said yes for celiac. So at that point, he said, we're gonna call it celiac, and I've stopped eating gluten. And about probably 8 or 9 months later, I actually started to realize just how good I was feeling. I didn't realize that I was feeling bad before until I started to feel better. It's kind of a strange realization to come to. Like, you think, this is just how I feel, but you don't realize that it's not 100% until you actually do feel 100%. You're like, wow, I didn't realize just how awful that was. I knew that I had qualified for the sprint distance, which was fine. I have done that one before, but I was really hoping to get qualified for the Olympic distance, and I got notification on Christmas that I was able to qualify for Team USA for the Olympic distance in Spain next year. So that was my goal this year when I was training, was to hopefully qualify for that distance. I put all this time and energy into doing this event. Like, I need to complete this. I know I can do it. I'm prepared for it. Mentally, you just have to say, you can do this. Way to go. I think she would be shocked, honestly. My 20-year-old self, my whole goal at 20 was to do a triathlon, not make it all the way to representing our country. Right before Christmas, Brian found a document that we had created when we first got married called Life Goals. And so we went through and we read it, and I've accomplished almost everything on the life goal list. I was like,